Trump decided he wasn't going to give us our farm check. That's fine. We're just going to burn the fucking crops. Fuck it. Let everybody starve.
Burning their own fields, halting production, and filing for insurance. This is what survival looks like for American farmers in 2025. Fertilizer prices have skyrocketed. Fuel and labor costs are out of control. Meanwhile, crop prices have collapsed. Farmers are being squeezed by market forces on one side and government indifference on the other. They're not quitting by choice. They're quitting because they have no choice left. And if you think this crisis only affects rural America, think again. When farmers walk away from the land, the entire country pays the price at the grocery store in our growing dependence on foreign food and in the crumbling faith that the things we rely on will always be there. Today, we take a hard look at 10 U.S. states that are watching their farms fall apart, not because they want to, but because the system is pushing them to the edge. Kansas. Kansas isn't slowing down, it's burning. Not wildfires, but wheat fields lit up by their own owners, not out of protest, but because the system leaves them no other way to survive. In 2025, Kansas farmers face a brutal paradox. The more they grow, the more they lose. The more they harvest, the more they bleed. Wheat prices have crashed, buyers are squeezing them dry, and the costs of fuel maintenance and labor are soaring. No drought, no pests, yet they still go bankrupt because the market has turned into their enemy. When the only choices are, keep planting and sink deeper, or torch the fields, file an insurance claim, many are choosing fire. You think that's far-fetched? According to the USDA, Kansas wheat acreage has dropped nearly 25% over the past 2 years. But those fields aren't abandoned because of failed crops, they're left behind because farmers themselves walked away, burned them down, and wiped away the season with tears in their eyes just to collect a payout and feed their families. And here's the scary part, they don't want to do this, but the system forces them to. Banks won't wait for harvests. Crop insurance only pays when there's total loss. So now farmers have to become engineers of destruction, creating loss just to survive. Kansas, once the beating heart of American agriculture, is now becoming a dead zone. Grain trucks no longer run down I-70. Farming towns no longer smell like fresh bread, just smoke, ash, and hopeless faces. And when nothing's planted, the dominoes start falling. No harvest mills shut down. Farm supply stores once buzzing with customers buying tractors. Fertilizer irrigation tools now have phones ringing into silence. Even the local diner in town is struggling. Its regulars were farmers, mechanics, truck drivers. Now they've vanished with the wheat. In places like Colby or Goodland, people greet each other with a sad, common phrase. Maybe it's time to leave. Even worse, Kansas is no longer an outlier. If this burn to survive model spreads, the entire Midwest won't be America's breadbasket, it'll be America's abandoned belt. The farm insurance system, what should have been a cushion for hard times, is now quietly fueling the fire that's consuming American agriculture. And it's all starting in Kansas. Today, when folks see a field burning in the distance, they don't call the fire department because they know it's not an accident. It's a father, a husband, a farmer setting fire to his own dream just to put food on the table. Oklahoma. If Kansas is the right hand of America's wheat industry, then Oklahoma is the left. And now both hands are trembling too weak to carry the weight any longer. Oklahomans used to proudly call themselves the people who feed America. But in the spring of 2025, hundreds of fields across western Oklahoma from Enid to Elk City are lying abandoned. Not because of a drought or a flood, but because the farmers no longer believe in the soil. Here the tragedy isn't fire, it's silence. No tractors rumbling to life each morning. No cheers when the rain finally comes. Just distant stares, hushed meetings at the bank and crop insurance forums, sitting quietly on kitchen tables. Farmers in Oklahoma know the deal. If they want to plant, they have to borrow thousands of dollars per hectare. But when wheat prices fall below the cost of packaging it, they're being asked to gamble their family's future on a losing hand. So they're stepping away. Unlike in Kansas, they're not burning the fields. They're simply letting the soil dry up. No planting, no watering, no fertilizer, just letting nature take its course, then filing for insurance as if the crop failed for reasons beyond their control. It's not fraud, it's survival. A survival tactic built into the very system meant to protect them. Why pour money into a harvest you know will lose when you can let the land die for a season and live off the payout? In small towns like Weatherford and Clinton, the whole rhythm of life is slowing to match the heartbeat of a broken farming economy. Gas stations are empty. Schools are losing students as parents leave in search of work. The local co-op, the beating heart of these communities, is now just a hollow meeting room. And here's what Americans in other states need to understand. This isn't just a farming slowdown. This is a society unraveling at the roots. When Oklahoma stops growing wheat, you won't see it on the front page. But you'll feel it in a $6 loaf of bread in higher taxes to prop up a strained insurance system in the growing doubt that this country's foundation is still sustainable. Oklahoma isn't surrendering. They're being forced to sit still and watch the land die just so they can survive. And that's the part that hurts the most. Nebraska. Nebraska isn't on fire like Kansas. It's not being abandoned like Oklahoma. Here, agriculture is quietly being erased like someone turning off one light bulb at a time in a giant house until the whole place fades into darkness. And nobody notices. It's not because Nebraskans are lazy. In fact, they're some of the hardest working people in America. And maybe that's the problem, because they know all too well the more you work the land, the more you lose. The harder you try, the deeper the debt. So instead of pushing forward, many are doing what millions of other Americans have done, searching for a steady job, a regular paycheck, something that doesn't tie them to the soil. And now this iconic agricultural state is seeing the greatest quiet exodus from farming in its history. In just 2 decades, Nebraska's wheat acreage has nearly been cut in half. According to the USDA grain, farms have sharply declined, especially in counties like Lincoln, Buffalo, and Hall. But numbers don't tell the whole story. The heartbreak lives in the eyes of an aging mother whose son refuses to carry on the family farm. It's in the voice of the farmer who quietly admits, "My kids will never come back to this land." And this is the moment urban America needs to take a long look in the mirror. You may not live in Nebraska, but chances are you're going through something similar, a job that feels increasingly pointless, a paycheck that can't keep up a daily choice between ideals and survival. Nebraska's farmers made their choice. They chose survival. Just like you did when you left behind a passion to take a job that simply paid the bills. This story isn't just about corn or wheat anymore. It's about a whole generation walking away from its roots just to cling to something far more fragile. Nebraska hasn't failed. It's become a reflection of America itself when the dream becomes a burdened reality, forces us to turn away. And every empty field here is a mirror of the faith quietly withering inside us all. Iowa. In Iowa, the sound of tractors still hums across the fields, but strangely, there's no one behind the wheel. The land still moves, but it's automation that's driving it now. Iowa is America's corn and soybean capital. But don't let that fool you. In 2025, farming here isn't a job for people. It's a game run by machines and corporations worth more than 10 small towns combined. Locals no longer plow the fields. They're working for the land their grandparents once owned. In less than a decade, Iowa has lost over 20% of its family farms, replaced by massive agribusiness operations that control thousands of acres of scale that would have been unthinkable just 15 years ago. Cornfields are now planted by drones maintained by AI and harvested by driverless combines, and the people they've been pushed to the sidelines hired as seasonal laborers to monitor the machines working the very soil that once sustained their families. You don't have to be a farmer to see yourself in this story. How many Americans are watching their jobs being swallowed by automation, by algorithms? How many are being downsized, restructured, or phased out? Iowa, maybe agriculture, but this pattern of quiet replacement is creeping through every corner of the economy. In places like Des Moines or Cedar Rapids, the conversation isn't about the next harvest, it's about unemployment forms, job retraining programs, and learning new skills just to survive in a world where robots plant the crops and humans wait in line for government assistance. The food is still there, but the belief that Americans still control their own future, that's what's running dry. We used to take pride in a nation built by workers, by farmers, factory hands, engineers. But now in Iowa and in many other places, Americans are starting to ask a haunting question. If this country no longer needs us, what does it even mean to be American? Iowa is the coldest kind of warning. The land hasn't died, but the people who cultivated it have been replaced. And the greatest loss isn't the cornfield. It's the pride, the control, and the sense of belonging to a nation they once built with their own hands. Texas. Texas hasn't disappeared, but something is running dry faster than people's patience water and trust. In 2025, parts of Central and South Texas are facing the worst drought in over 3 decades. Medina Lake and the Edwards Aquifer, the lifeblood of thousands of farms, are hitting record lows. There's no water for irrigation, no rain when it's needed, and no more time to hope that next year will be better. Imagine being a farmer in Hondo or New Braunfels. It's the middle of a brutal summer, temperatures nearing 100 degrees. You turn on the irrigation valve, and nothing comes out. The lush green field you once knew is now cracked, dry earth. You're not walking away because you're lazy, you're walking away because even nature has turned its back on you. And then it hits you, all the taxes you paid don't drill a deeper well. They don't bring back the rain. You're on your own. But this isn't just about water. This is about the collapse of a way of life. Texas farmers are now doing the one thing they swore they'd never do, selling the land, the last thing they had, and the only thing they believed was untouchable. Every plot that goes up for sale is a quiet admission, I can't win this anymore. You don't have to live in Texas to feel that. Ask yourself, have you ever had to give up something you love just to survive? Have you ever sold off a dream just to cover the bills? The crisis in Texas isn't some dramatic headline. It's a mirror, a reflection of an America struggling to hold on to the basics, food, shelter, and sustainability. Texas isn't complaining. They're just quietly packing up and leaving. And if you're in New York or Ohio or California, you may just be watching today. But soon you could be living it, because no place can withstand a system that pushes even its strongest people to let go. Colorado. Right now in Colorado, you can stand in the middle of what used to be a lush green field and hear the most haunting sound of all silence. No tractors, no animals, not even the distant voice of a neighbor calling across the fence. Just silence, the kind that settles in when an entire industry is dying, and no one seems to notice. People here aren't afraid of drought, they've lived with it for years. What scares them is how everything seems to be slipping away inch by inch, like the water line in a reservoir falling every week. One day you wake up and realize there's not enough water to irrigate, not enough funds to drill deeper, and not enough strength left to keep pretending everything will be okay. Colorado isn't as famous for farming as Kansas or Iowa, and that's exactly what makes the tragedy here so stark. When a state with mountains tourism and a booming tech industry still can't save its farmers, you know the system is broken. And here's the thing, you don't have to be a farmer to understand it. You might be a mechanic in Denver, a librarian in Pueblo, a high school teacher in Fort Collins, but you're probably feeling the same thing the farmers in Grand Junction are feeling. Rising costs, flat wages, and that sinking sense that I'm doing everything I can. And it's still not enough. Colorado is entering a new era, one where people no longer talk about planting or harvest. They talk about selling. Young people aren't coming back to the family farm because they know better. Why come home when the land is dry, the water's gone, and the market doesn't care? Older folks are doing what they once swore they'd never do, calling a real estate agent, not to get rich, just to stop drowning in bills, failed crops, and rejected loan applications. You can see it on the side of the highways, those signs that say, land for sale, well water, and 3-phase power included. But that's not just land for sale. That's someone's dream sold off for pennies because the owner just couldn't hang on any longer. If you think this is just a rural issue that has nothing to do with you, wait for the next harvest season. When supply dries up and prices for meat and produce skyrocket, you'll realize Colorado isn't alone. They just fell first in a collapse that will sooner or later pull us all in. Colorado didn't fall because its people were weak. It fell because the system looked the other way. And make no mistake, it'll do the same to the rest of us. Illinois. No one expected Illinois, a state with Chicago, with industry, with finance, to quietly begin collapsing from a place almost no one's been watching the farms of central and western Illinois. In towns like Springfield and Decatur and across the quiet rural outskirts, the familiar roar of harvest time combines has been replaced by something else, the sound of wind blowing through unharvested cornfields. The corn still grows, but no one's picking it. Not because they're lazy, but because there's no one to sell it to. The math doesn't lie, it costs about $900 an acre to grow corn the right way. The market is offering $600. Every season becomes another cut to a bank account already on life support. So why keep going? Illinois isn't dry like Colorado. It's not burning like Kansas. But it's dying a slower death because it's being ignored, forgotten in the silence of the big cities surrounding it. Chicago is preoccupied with crime and property taxes. Urban residents are busy arguing about immigration politics and inflation. No one's looking toward the countryside where the very people who once fed them are quietly dismantling barns, listing plots of land for sale not to get rich, but to pay off last year's crop loan. But eventually even the cities will feel the loss. Bread gets more expensive, eggs disappear from shelves, grocery stores run out of seasonal produce. The supply chain doesn't break because of some distant global disruption, it breaks because American farmers are quitting. They're done planting, done harvesting, done waiting. You don't have to be a farmer to see yourself in this story. You just have to be someone who once believed that if you worked hard, if you honored your parents' legacy, you'd be okay. But in Illinois, farmers are working hard to walk away. They're not angry, just tired, just quiet when their youngest child finishes college and says, "I'm moving to Chicago." There's nothing left down here, and at that moment the parents don't argue, they nod, because they understand. The story of Illinois isn't just about farming. It's a grim warning that even a state with infrastructure, with markets, with prosperity, can still fall victim to the spiral of losses, neglect, and quiet despair. No one is saving them. There's no grand recovery plan, no serious effort from the federal level. Just small, painful decisions: sell the tractor, stop planting eventually, move out. Illinois is being hollowed out from within. And if we keep thinking this is only a farmer's problem, then soon even your downtown Chicago apartment will feel the chill of an economy cracking at its roots. Minnesota. Minnesota, the proud land of 10,000 lakes, has fallen into a bitter irony in 2025. Water is everywhere, yet it can't keep a farmer's dream alive. Here no one's torching their fields. No one's fleeing in desperation. They're still here quiet, resilient, and waiting for grain prices to bounce back, waiting for promised relief to actually arrive, waiting for the son studying in St. Paul to come home and take over the farm. But year after year, nothing moves forward. Or worse, it slides backward. There's been no catastrophic disaster, no headline-grabbing event, just a steady drip of pressures, small on their own, but crushing in combination. A slight rise in fertilizer costs, a delayed shipment of soybeans to China, a 2% hike in short-term loan interest. Minor details maybe, unless you're a family farmer in western Minnesota. Then they're not just numbers. They're the financial sentence hanging over every season. Minnesota's farmers haven't given up. They still plow, still plant, still harvest. But at the end of every season, they sit down, open their books, and stare at the red ink. Not for 1 year. For 3 years straight. And then they do what millions of Americans in the cities are already doing every month: juggle credit card debt, beg the bank for an extension, or worse, put a grocery item back in the fridge because payday's still days away. You don't have to be a farmer to feel that weight. You just have to be an American in 2025, working hard, paying taxes, not complaining, and somehow still living paycheck to paycheck. Minnesota is a quiet reminder: collapse doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it arrives as a long, slow surrender. People here aren't asking for much. They're not angry. They just want to make a living doing the work passed down from their parents and grandparents. But even that now feels out of reach. Small towns like Fergus Falls, Wilmar, and Austin are changing, but not for the better. The farm equipment shop is empty. The grain warehouse closes early. The cafe on Main Street, once packed during harvest mornings, now has just a handful of regulars quietly staring at yesterday's paper. Minnesota isn't screaming like the drought-stricken states, but its numbness may be even scarier because it creeps in slowly, invisibly, until it's too late. And when even a place as steady and rooted as Minnesota begins to sink into loss after loss, how long can the rest of America expect to stand? Wisconsin, the traditional dairy farm, once the beating heart of Wisconsin, is quietly fading away. Not because of a natural disaster, not because of disease, but because milk has become too cheap to survive on. A gallon of milk doesn't even cover the cost of feeding the cow that produced it. Electricity, vet bills, labor, everything keeps going up. And even the most stubborn farmers now understand every day they milk the herd, they sink a little deeper into the red. So they start doing the one thing they swore they'd never do, selling off their cows. Not all at once, but one by one. Quietly, discreetly trying to hold on to a shred of dignity for as long as they can. These cows weren't just livestock, they had names. They were part of the family, but now they're sold by the pound, sent to slaughter, and no one has the time or the heart to say goodbye. But the most painful loss isn't the cows. It's the next generation. Wisconsin's farmers aren't afraid of hard work. They're afraid their kids will look at the family farm and see a dead end. And the truth is, more and more of them are leaving for Milwaukee, for Madison, for anywhere else. And they leave behind one sentence that cuts deeper than any number on a balance sheet. "I'm not gonna live like you did, Dad." The death of farming in Wisconsin isn't loud. It doesn't come with flames or floods. It just makes those wooden homes on the prairie colder in winter, emptier at night, and hollow each April calving season when the barns no longer hold any cows. You don't raise cattle. That's okay. But you've probably had to make the same choice. Keep doing what you love but can't survive on, or let go to survive but lose a piece of who you are. Wisconsin isn't failing because its people are weak. It's failing because this system has no place left for those who make real things with their hands with their sweat, by waking up at 4 a.m. every day for 40 years. And when Wisconsin, the state that once fed a nation with milk, is forced to sell off the last drops of its pride, then wherever you are, it's time to ask the hard question: if the people who feed us can't feed themselves, then who will be left to feed us at all, North Dakota? North Dakota is a strange place. The winters are brutal, the land is dry, and the wind howls across the empty fields for half the year. But what's always been stranger, more remarkable, is that in this unforgiving place, people still worked the land. They still planted. They still stood strong. That was then. In 2025, the thing farmers in North Dakota never saw coming wasn't the weather, it was the market, and the deafening silence from those in charge. They've lived through blizzards, but nothing prepares you for harvesting your crop and having nowhere to send it, for watching a truck drive in circles because no buyer will take your grain, for hauling hundreds of tons of wheat to the elevator only to be paid less than what it costs to fuel the tractor. And the scariest part, every expense keeps rising while prices fall off a cliff. North Dakota doesn't quit easily, but when farmers here start backing away, that's not just a red flag, that's the final warning. A warning from people who know hardship better than most, yet now have to look their spouses, their kids, and their debt in the face and whisper, "We can't keep going." They don't post about it. They don't carry protest signs. They just stop. 300 acres untouched. The tractors still sit in the shed. The silos still stand. But no one has the heart or the money to bet on another season when the odds are worse than Vegas. You don't have to till soil to know what that feels like. You just have to be an American who's ever tried to keep a small business alive while the rent went up again, who skipped vacation just to keep health insurance, who told your kid everything's fine while your bank account said otherwise. North Dakota is America's quiet reflection. No rage, no headlines. Just a slow, silent unraveling. In towns around Bismarck, Minot, and Jamestown, the signs are everywhere. The breakfast diners close earlier. The ag equipment shops let go of staff. Even the churches once packed on Sunday mornings now sit half empty because everyone's too busy figuring out how to make it through the week. North Dakota hasn't failed, but they're pulling back field by field, family by family, until there's nothing left to pull from. And if even here, where resilience is part of the soil, people are starting to let go, then we have to ask who's going to survive in an economy where hard work no longer pays off. When even our growers and ranchers, the quiet backbone of this nation, are walking away from the land they've devoted their lives to, the question for the rest of us becomes clear. Can America still feed itself? You might not feel it yet in your local grocery store, but when your food bill climbs, when shelves go empty, when even the most stable places start falling, will you still believe that you won't be next? Don't just watch and move on. Tell us in the comments, what do you think is really happening to America? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next video, where we dig into the stories that mainstream media often ignores. This video does not promote division or encourage secession. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration analysis and to spark thoughtful discussion on current events, emotions, and social trends. We respect the U.S. Constitution and all federal laws.